Today, here, only 20 kilometers from Ukraine, we brought the continent together to reaffirm our collective and strong determination to bring peace back to Europe.
20 kilometers from Ukraine, the leaders of 27 EU member states and 20 other European countries gathered in Moldova for the European Political Community Summit. The location, a show of support for Moldova, the former Soviet republic which applied to join the European Union after Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022.
Today, we have shown our strength and unity at a time when the stability of our continent is under threat. We have shown that we are united against the biggest military aggression since World War II.
The meeting posed a security and organizational challenge for the country of 2.5 million people, which is seeking a path to EU ascension while being wary of Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy took part in the EPC summit ahead of an expected counteroffensive against Russia's invasion, pressing his case for Ukraine to be part of the NATO military alliance.
What is very important, our future in EU, and Ukraine is ready to be in NATO. We are waiting when NATO will be ready to host and to have Ukraine. And I think security guarantees are very important, not only for Ukraine, for our neighbors, for Moldova, because of the Russia and of their aggression in Ukraine and potential aggression for other part of Europe.
With Kyiv promising a counteroffensive using recently acquired Western weapons to try to drive out Russian occupiers, much of the summit's focus will be on the war-torn country.
When we'll win, the war will stop, or Russia can stop this war earlier.
Poland, an ally of Ukraine, promised it would help Ukraine train F-16 fighter pilots, but that Warsaw had too few Patriot batteries to supply any to Kyiv. The UK also promising support.
Well, I agree with the NATO Secretary General. Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO. And what we're also talking to Ukraine about right now is making sure that they have all the support they need.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials say the latest Russian missile attack on Kyiv today killed at least 3 people and wounded 16. Among those killed in the pre-dawn assault were a 9-year-old girl and her mother. It was the highest casualty toll from a single attack on the Ukrainian capital over the past month and thwarted Kyiv's plan to celebrate International Children's Day. More than 600 kilometers east from the summit, the Ukrainian army kept fighting Russian troops with artillery systems supplied by Czechia and France. Ukrainian soldiers fired Western-supplied artillery systems in the eastern Donetsk region yesterday as the country's president wanted to receive a clear decision on its future in the NATO military alliance.
Joining us now is political science professor Jaro Bilocerkowycz from the University of Dayton in Ohio. Professor, next month, Zelenskyy wants confirmation that Ukraine will be welcomed into NATO. How likely is this to happen, and do you think there will be opposition to this?
Yeah, I don't think it's a clear sign that they'll give NATO membership amidst the war. I think, among other things, Ukraine would like at least security guarantees short of NATO membership. They certainly want some commitment longer term that they will get in, presumably at the end of the war. And of course, the East European countries are more strongly committed to that because they themselves feel the most vulnerable. Others are saying, well, yeah, maybe long term. Britain came out saying Ukraine belongs in. But, you know, the Germans and the French and others will say, yeah, but not amidst the war, because therefore then NATO itself would be more directly involved. And so I don't see it happening beyond sort of a roadmap to say, okay, when the war is over, and Ukraine is looking for even security guarantees for some key countries, the US, Germany, and Britain, among others. They've said that at least give us that so that even if we're not in NATO in the immediate term, we'll still have some security guarantees so that Putin doesn't think in 3 or 4 or 5 years he can try again to take another bite out of the apple.
For the last few months, we've been hearing all about Ukraine getting ready for a counteroffensive attack. What's the holdup and what can we expect?
Well, that's a good question. It's a lot of suspense, right? It's been building up for months. So I think from Ukraine's perspective, one, they're trying to get as much equipment as they can. And to some extent, by not taking action now, they're sort of telling the Western allies, give us more now, quickly. because we need it. Secondly, I think it gives them a little bit extra time for training for some of these combined operations, because again, they're going on the offense, which is somewhat different than playing defense. So I think that's important. And I think thirdly, there may even be some psychological benefit of keeping the Russians anxious, waiting weeks and weeks. When is this going to start? And they're the ones who are kind of unsettled at this point. So I think all three of those are at play. At the same time, Ukraine doesn't want to wait too long because they want to show results. They'll solidify support, and not knowing what might happen in the U.S. election, they have to show progress. We take a lot of that, liberate a lot of that land, so that they'll have that leverage if there is any kind of negotiations subsequently.
Do you think Ukraine will be targeting Moscow on Russian soil more often now? We've seen a few attacks being blamed on Ukraine as of late.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question. And of course, part of the logic is that Ukraine wants to unsettle the Russian elite and population, that this isn't just a quote unquote special operation abroad or a war abroad, but this is something that they're involved in. And just as Ukraine and Kyiv are being relentlessly attacked almost every day now for a few weeks, they want Moscow and the leadership and even the general public to say, you're also not invulnerable. In other words, it has symbolic meaning. It also unsettles them. It lets them know it's a cost. They can't just passively support it. It's abroad. Why do I have to worry about it? Well, you might have to worry about it. And the attacks are intended, again, to do that. And part of that is not just psychological and symbolic. It's also intended to divert Russia's, to redeploy their forces to guard their border and thus not to be so much in Ukraine. There's not showing what they have to defend. So therefore, that could be very helpful for Ukraine from a strategic perspective.
Thanks so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.